Stick around a little bit longer.
Mid to late 1800s, so it's set up and it's owned by the Marion County School District.
I knew that.
Basically has it, sponsors it. And but anyway, I'm a blacksmith. I'm a real blacksmith. This is really what I do for a living. I've been doing blacksmithing on a professional level since 1991. I'm out of Ohio, West Central Ohio, and I'm up there about 8-9 months a year, and then I'm down here about 3 months a year.
Okay.
And I do some historical events down here, and so this is very representation of what you'd see in a blacksmith shop. You'd have had a blacksmith shop like this in the 1700s in an early setting in Ohio or New York or New Jersey or anywhere. I mean, the blacksmith shops were pretty much all the same. You had a forge, which that's what I've got right here in front of me that I'm heating my iron. And you're going to heat the iron up, and when it's hot, it's soft, it's pliable, and you can make whatever shape that you desire. I'm pounding it down, pouring it out. It'll be thin at the end, and it'll still be fairly much the same size, back about 1.5 inches back. I'm going to make a little eye on the end of this, like basically what you see down there. I've started with a straight piece of iron.
Yes.
I'm going to draw this down. This isn't my work, but this is basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a little eye on here, and then I'm going to make a hook out of it on one end.
Where would they get the raw materials to make iron?
Where did we get the raw materials?
Yeah.
We were getting a lot of raw materials up until the mid 1800s was being brought in from overseas.
Okay.
But then when we started mining iron ore and everything here in the United States, which a lot of that was being done up around the Great Lakes region,
Sure.
then we started producing our own iron here. But otherwise it was basically all being imported in from foreign countries, and they basically made just chunks of iron or bar stock, and it went in the bottom of ships, and it was brought over as ballast in the bottom of the ships. So they were bringing something over to us, and then they were loading up our goods and then transporting them back. So otherwise they were just putting rocks and boulders in the bottom of ships for ballast, because the boats had to have something in them or they were not seaworthy.
Right.
But anyway, that's how we got our early iron, and then again we started producing our own iron. There's the first half of that.
Yeah, cool.
This actually is going to become an S hook. It's going to actually become that when I get all done with it.
Yeah.
But that just gives you a quick of what we're doing here. And yeah, that's the way we got our iron. And the early iron that came in was bloom iron, and it'd be just big chunks of iron like this. That's actually beeswax. That's what I actually heat the iron up and put beeswax on it, and that'll give it a somewhat of a rust-free finish. That's the way we got our original iron, was that way. Of course, transportation was the biggest problem, is until we started getting railroaded in and being able to transport things, it either was going by wagon or by boat. So when you run out of water and there wasn't the Mississippi River and you weren't within a few miles of the Mississippi River, it was probably kind of hard, or the Colorado River, to get your iron transported to you until rail come in. And then after rail come in, why then we were able to get more, and of course towns grew and things like that. But we were very frugal with our iron because it was so hard to get a hold of, and we were the first recyclers, because if you had something that was made out of iron and it broke, you could take it back to the blacksmith and we would repair it. If you didn't want it, that particular item that was not usable to you anymore, you could cut it and make 2 or 3 other items out of it. So it was iron was very, very sought after, very important. Iron's very durable. Just to give you a quick little story, how important iron was, and how it was if you had a home, say for instance, you had a home, a house that was built, and you had some nails in it and things like that. Of course, you know, originally they weren't using iron to assemble houses. It was wooden pegs, and you used leather straps for hinges and things like that. But, you know, people would then get nails, and they would nail some things together. But if you had a house, for instance, in the 1800s, and you were going to move, and you could not get somebody to move into your house, which probably you would sell your house for whatever it costs to make the iron to reassemble the house, you would literally burn your house down, sift through the rubble, pick out the iron that was there, because it wouldn't hurt the nails. I mean, they've already been heated, and sift through the rubble, box up your iron, and put it in your Conestoga wagon, and down the road you go to build your new house someplace else. So it was iron was gold. I mean, it was worth more than gold. So, that's the way it was. So, and no town could exist without a blacksmith. You could do without a doctor. You could do without a dentist. You could do without a library. You could do without a school. You couldn't do without a blacksmith. You know, blacksmiths did 99% of their work was not shoeing horses. Yes, we had the iron to make the shoes for the horses. Shoeing horses really didn't come into play until they started doing hard surface cobblestone roads in the bigger cities. But as far as out in the country goes, you didn't need shoes on a horse. The only time you needed shoes on a horse was in the wintertime, and they would shoe the horses. And of course, I don't have one with me. This is here. But they would weld big spikes and cleats on, so that in the winter, like where they're logging, now not down here, but up where they're logging, in the wintertime when the ground was frozen, and that's when they'd move all the logs because the ground was solid and frozen, and then they would haul the logs, that it would be like great big spikes on their hooves, and that's what they'd use. But prior to about 1850, there wasn't a lot of horseshoeing being done. Civil War, they were starting to get into it. They had people just called shoers, and that's what they did. But prior to that, no, it's a misnomer. I mean, they weren't doing a lot of, iron was still too highly sought after pieces to be making stuff out of. I can show you a friend of mine that has Spanish descent, and he takes horseshoes and he makes things out of horseshoes, and so that's what they would do. I mean, if there was a horseshoe was wore down, they couldn't reshape it and put it back on the horse, then they would make hooks and hangers and whatever you needed out of it. So I make horse hoof picks for the people in the equestrian thing. It's a hook that looks it looks similar to this, but I will cut them down, and I'll draw this down, and I'll make this a lot wider down here, and then I make a little handle that pulls all the way around like this, and you can hold on to it, and it's for cleaning the dirt and stuff out of the hoof on a horse. And I'll usually get used horseshoes and do that. And but anyway, that's kind of the story behind us.
And are these all like nails, spikes?
What's that? Oh yeah, nails here. That's just steel that I've cut to make pre-cut to make stuff out of. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Those are handmade nails right there.
You needed nails back then.
What's that?
They needed nails back then.
Oh,
that makes perfect sense about the horseshoe.
Yeah, you had you take a town of 300 or 400 people. The blacksmith would have had a couple or three apprentices in there, and that's all those apprentices would be doing is making nails.
Okay.
They would be making nails.
Interesting.
It was a cottage industry during the wars. The women and children, when the men was out to war, the women and children would have small little forges set up in towns, and they'd be making nails and things like that. So it's you don't need a lot of fire. You can have a little ground fire and blow in with a blowpipe, a piece of cane or something, and make a blowpipe, and have a little fire made out of wood, and get iron hot enough to make nails. It doesn't. That's not. We're not building rocket parts. We're making nails.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.